Extremely dangerous Category 4 Hurricane Matthew paralleling the east coast of Florida at this hour. I'm Mike Naso from the Tropical Video Update page here on YouTube with the latest on our extremely dangerous hurricane that we've been dealing with now for several days. You can see it there on the satellite loop, just ravaging the Bahamas and the eastern coastline of Florida there. And it's looking better organized, actually, as it moves over the hot Gulf Stream waters. And we have another strong hurricane out there. It's Hurricane Nicole, which is actually a Category 2 hurricane. Not quite a major hurricane, but it has strengthened, even though it's getting sheared by the outflow of Matthew. And it's expected to be a hurricane a week from now, but stay spinning randomly out there. If you're in Bermuda, keep a close eye on it. The same if you're in the Turks Caicos out here. It's a hurricane, so you want to watch it. But again, we're not going to focus much on Nicole right now because the main story is this Category 4 hurricane bearing down on the eastern coastline of Florida. Here's the latest. As of 11 p.m., it was at 27.1 north, 79.2 west. Winds were 130, making it a Category 4, gusting as high as Category 5 strength, especially at the higher levels. It's moving northwest at 12 or 13 miles an hour. We haven't seen any real change from that. We've seen the occasional wobble. 939 millibars is the pressure. Charlie came into Punta Gorda as a Category 4 at 941. So that shows you just how strong this hurricane is. Expected to remain a major hurricane as it comes very, very close to the coastline of Florida and perhaps even makes a landfall, although it's more likely that it's just going to rake the coastline. And even for South Carolina and North Carolina, you can't rule out a landfall, but this might be a rare situation where it doesn't make landfall, but it hugs the coast as a strong hurricane. And that's still just as bad, if not worse. At least when it, makes a landfall, it's inland and weakening. If it's hugging the coast, it could keep sapping that warm water from the Gulf Stream. I'll show you that in a second. We do have our hurricane warnings, of course, out for the northwestern Bahamas, and then from Boca Raton to South Santee River in South Carolina, including Lake Okeechobee. And tropical storm warning, of course, for the west coast. Oh, and by the way, now north of South Santee River to Surf City, North Carolina, you guys are under a tropical storm warning because this is expected to ride right up the coast. And you can see the computer models bring it back into the Bahamas in the next 5 days as a tropical storm, some even take it into the Gulf of Mexico. It'll probably be a shadow of its former self by then, but nevertheless, it's a pain. Rainfall on recovery efforts is not a good thing. The track reminds us a lot of Hurricane David. In 1979, it roared through the Caribbean as a Category 5, and then it hit eastern Cuba, and it took a track paralleling right up the coastline of Florida, making landfall in Georgia as a Category 1 or 2 hurricane. But the main difference is that this is a Category 4. This is a lot stronger than David was when it paralleled Florida, so the impacts will probably be much worse than if it was only a Category 1 or 2 storm. To be honest with you, the wind field has expanded. I'll show you why in just a second on the radar, but you can see the hurricane force winds starting to impinge. Fort Lauderdale has had very strong gusts, 60 miles an hour. We saw West Palm Beach have strong winds. Of course, Grand Bahama Island just got ravaged by a Category 4. And the last time a hurricane of that strength hit Grand Bahama Island was in 1935. So that's a problem. I do not want to see, I dread seeing the pictures of what's going to come out of the Bahamas tomorrow with this dangerous storm. There's the infrared satellite imagery, and you can see it continuing to look very impressive. You have a dangerous Category 4 hurricane leaving Grand Bahama Island. There's Cape Canaveral to the north and west. There's Grand Bahama Island to its south and east. And in the center is the eye of a powerful Category 4 hurricane in October. A very rare event, and something that we hope we don't see again for a long time. There's a long-range radar out of Melbourne, and you can see it did build a secondary eye wall, but that inner core, that little eye wall, has not really dissipated. In fact, it looks a little bit better at this hour, which means it's maintaining its intensity. And even if that eye wall collapsed and it weakened to a Category 3 or even a Category 2, that would mean that the wind field is expanding, which is not good news because if it stays a tightly coiled Cat 4, there's more of a chance that the worst winds could stay offshore. If it's a ragged Category 2, you're just going to get pounded relentlessly. Remember Francis 2004? this type of the area of the Florida coastline, same type of deal here. So that is not good news if it continues to maintain an outer wind maxima and that strong inner core. There's a closer look at it, and it does look a little bit more impressive here. Right in there is where those Category 4 winds are, and you can see Vero Beach, you can see Melbourne, the NASA Space Shuttle at Cape Canaveral, Daytona Beach, Orlando, Sanford, West Palm, Grand Bahama Island. It left you in God only knows what type of shape after making landfall as a Category 4 hurricane there. But look at that. Very, very dangerous situation, guys. Now, one of the reasons it's maintained itself is it's over the very hot Gulf Stream waters, and that's kind of helping to fuel it. Plus, it's left the Bahamas. It's not really over land anymore, and so it's over water until it starts impacting the coastline of the United States, which is why it's maintained such an intense Category 4 wind as measured by the Air Force reconnaissance aircrafts. The rainfall is also a threat with the wind. You can see in the next 72 hours we're expecting very, very heavy rain, not just in Florida, but the Carolinas as well, all the way up to North Carolina. Parts of Virginia even are going to get in on some of this action as the hurricane loops back around. It's going to continue to rain all over the place. Even if the winds weaken, the rainfall's not going anywhere, and that is concerning, especially if it comes back and rains on Florida and the Bahamas again while they're trying to recover from whatever these winds and storm surge do right now. That's going to be a problem. Now, as far as the storm surge is concerned, you can see areas of Titusville, Port Orange, Daytona, Palm Coast, Jacksonville. It's not just the coastline. You could have inland flooding as well in some of these bays and estuaries in here. That's going to be of concern with those onshore winds. Remember, if a hurricane is counterclockwise and it's moving past you, you could just get pounded relentlessly by an onshore flow. So you get beach erosion, high swells, storm surge on top of the heavy rain, and of course the winds. But again, even if the eye wall stays just offshore, the hurricane force winds are going to be onshore, and especially in gusts. You could get wind gusts well into the hundreds with this hurricane, especially depending on how close the eye wall actually gets to land. So again, this is a very, very dangerous storm. All preparations to protect life and property should be rushed to completion. Hunker down if you remain behind and ride this thing out as best you can. An extremely powerful Category 4 hurricane bearing down on the coastline of Florida. And new update from the Hurricane Center as of midnight. It continues to move away from the northwest Bahamas. 55 mile per hour wind gust at Stewart, 54 mile per hour wind gust at Vero Beach, and it's now 60 miles east-southeast of Fort Pierce and 105 miles southeast of Cape Canaveral, still 130 miles an hour, Cat 4, moving northwest at 13, and that's from forecaster Stacy Stewart at the Hurricane Center, trying to get you as real-time updates as possible here, and of course, dealing with a very dangerous storm, folks. One of the worst we've seen, certainly in this part of Florida, in the last, say, 50 years, quite possible. There it is on the satellite imagery, a very dangerous hurricane bearing down on Florida. I'm going to let you guys go right now. I'm going to be doing what you're doing, tracking this hurricane. I'll see you guys next time as we continue to monitor an extremely dangerous Category 4 Hurricane Matthew.